Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. This is a slightly different one from my usual Ukraine war obsession that I've been feeding on a daily basis. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Biden and Trump and what's been going on with classified documents, and just sort of doing a quick synopsis of both cases of their classified document shenanigans and seeing whether there's a parallel. There's a tendency for those on the right in American media to paint these two incidents as parallels, to try and say, oh, look at Biden, Biden's terrible. If you're going to say Trump's bad, then look, Biden must be bad too. And people on the left saying, no, these are completely different incidents, and they've got different details, and the way that they're being handled is completely different. So it's unfair to do that. And I am coming from someone broadly on the left, but I don't want to be bashing Trump here, but I am going to conclude that they are actually very different, and I'm going to lay out how they are different here. I've written an article for Only Sky, which I'll link below, that this will be, broadly drawn from. So what's happened in both these cases? Let's look at Trump's account, or the Trump's case first. Just a really quick synopsis. So it started back in May 2021 when the National Archives and Records Administration, so that's NARA, they the organization that looks after national records, and their administration. So archiving documents. And what happens is when you come to the end of a presidency, you hand over a whole load of documents that need to be archived, so that they are then, looked after safely and securely, and you don't take them with you. So they contacted Donald Trump about missing documents following his loss of the 2020 election and the transfer of presidential records. So the Presidential Record Act stipulates that the records must be transferred by the end of the term. Okay, so the then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said that he would take care of the transfer, which took place on January 18th, 2021. But Nara knew that there was missing material. So, for example, famously the letters between Trump and Kim Jong Un, congratulatory letter from Barack Obama, they were not in the document, so they're the pretty obvious ones. And so they contacted Trump's team, who promised to return the material, but it didn't happen. And in fact, this started off this merry dance between Trump and his team and official organizations, and a kind of refusal to do what was expected and to do what was asked. So Trump had been indeed actually displaying some of this documentation, so some of those letters in his office, so sort of brandishing them about. Mr. Trump, so this is a quote from, I think, a New York Times article saying, quote, Mr. Trump shows off the letters from Mr. Kim, waving them at people in his office where some boxes of material from the White House are being stored. End quote. So later in 2021, NARA issued a warning and a threat of a referral to the Justice Department. Trump apparently went through some, but not all of the boxes of classified documents. And in December, Trump's lawyer, since it had got to this kind of legal stage, informed NARA of the existence of 12 boxes. So they said, right, we have 12 boxes. Okay, we need to get them to you. This is obviously coming up for a year past when they should have been uh, already given to NARA. In January 2022, so this is now, well, actually, no, this is a year and a half. So this is now coming up for 2 years after they should have been properly archived. The National Archives negotiated with Trump's lawyers for the retrieval of what ended up actually being 15 boxes of material. However, within these boxes were classified documents. So originally, it wasn't thought that these were like heavily classified. These are just documents that need to be archived properly. And as a result, the Justice Department was contacted. Trump then received a grand jury subpoena seeking additional documents. And of the documents in the 15 boxes, it was determined that there were 184 unique documents that had classification markings, of which 25 were marked top secret, 92 secret, and 67 confidential. So different ratings of classification there. These were all intermingled together and showed very sort of poor record keeping. The New York Times set out what happened. Uh, and this is a quote from them. The markings show that some documents pertained to foreign intelligence surveillance and information gathered by human intelligence sources. Some were not to be shared with foreign entities, and others were marked ORCON, meaning that the agency that originated the document had to approve any dissemination beyond the government entities approved to see it. Mr. Trump's handwritten notes are also found on some of the documents, end quote. So NARA criticized Trump because some of the records it received at the end of his administration, quote, included paper records that had been torn up by the former President Trump, end quote. The FBI then found fresh information and video footage indicating that Trump's team had retained and was shuffling classified documents around. What made matters worse for Trump was that this came after one of his lawyers had signed a written attestation that all the documents marked as classified had been turned over to the correct authorities. Obviously, this wasn't the case, and they had video evidence of this being so. So this was used as justification to search Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago, and in August 2022, they seized a further 100 classified documents, ranging from confidential to top secret. One empty classified folder was even on display at a Trump-themed bar in Trump Tower. So I think the bar is it I forget what the name of it, Bar and Whiskey or something like that. Literally had the classified document, although the folder, although it was empty, it's just on show as if to say, look, hey, here's classified, we've got access to classified documentation or whatever. The Washington Post has reported, and I'll put the links to these articles in the description, quote, while most were found in a storage room, some were found in desk drawers in Trump's office, mixed with post-presidential communications with a religious leader, a book author, and a pollster, among others. And Zaid, this is Mark S. Zaid, who's a security violations lawyer, said that if Trump had returned all the missing documents when the archives first requested them, that would have been the end of the matter. But it became a criminal matter only because Trump and his lawyers delayed at first and then obstructed, he said. And this, of course, invoked Trump's very public wrath as he directed, which he directed against the FBI and the Justice Department. And the case is presently still being investigated, with the Justice Department stating in court filings that it was still determining whether more government documents remain missing. So we could have many more to add to that, or not. Now let's compare that to what happened with Biden, and this has just come out. So the major difference, and there are many, came in how we find out about the Biden documents. So on January the 9th this year, so very recently, the White House, through Richard Sauber, the special counsel to the president, made a public announcement that, quote, a small number of documents with classified markings, end quote, and that's apparently about 10 documents, were discovered on November the 2nd last year, as the president's personal attorneys were clearing out an office that Biden had used from the middle of 2017 to 2020 as a then former president. So here we have Biden's team contacting uh, the well, okay, let me say this first before I discuss that. So these documents were found in a locked closet, which is to say that there were far fewer records where Trump had perhaps over 300, and they were at least locked away. NARA was notified on the day they were found and collected the documents the next morning. This is the other way round from Trump, the Trump scenario, whereby he was contacted by NARA and eventually subpoenaed, initially resisting their return, and in fact being resistant to any kind of cooperation right throughout the whole process. So Biden here, and probably knowing that doing it any other way would end up him, well, A, it's a correct thing to do, morally and legally, and B, if it came out that he'd done anything other than that, it's just more hassle than it's worth. So he said, or his team said, look, right, we found these documents when we were clearing up and we shouldn't have had them. So we have contacted the Justice Department, or we contacted NARA, and it's all going through the official channels and all happening exactly how it should from now on. So yeah, there's been a mistake here. We don't know how it happened, but let's rectify it, which is a very different narrative to what happened with Trump and his team of lawyers and Pat Cipollone and Mark Meadows and all sorts of people involved in this kind of really difficult affair. Uh, Biden's lawyers proceeded to search Biden's two residencies in Delaware, and one of those they found a small number of classified documents in his locked garage and 5 pages in the house. These were given straight to the Justice Department, and it's yet unknown what level of classification these documents are. Okay, so not unsure about those documents, but there aren't many of them. They were also given back. So we don't know how the Biden documents found their way to their locations. So we can't really cast too much opinion on how they came to be there. My guess is that would be a genuine mistake. But we do know that Trump ordered those things, his documents, to be removed from the White House. So we have potentially got very different motivations going on here for very different reasons for why the documents ended up still being in the possession of these two people after the point that they should have been. So some Republicans have also suggested that this news was delayed until after the midterm. So it was discovered on November the 2nd. And in the end, it's been a 2 month delay. However, in the Trump case, it took 9 months for the news to be made public. So I don't think that really holds. Uh, I think, you know, they've waited until things have had a bit more clarity, until things needed to be released, um, and that's completely understandable in my opinion. Disagree if you want. So the conclusion is, while it's improper that the classified documents have ended up in either of these places, and we can safely say that it shouldn't have happened. There are many differences. There are far fewer documents in Biden's case. They weren't brandished about, but were locked away, either in his house, in a locked closet, in an office, or locked in his garage. Um, Rather than strewn about the place and indeed shown to many people in a kind of like check this out type way, so brandished about. uh, Biden has cooperated fully with the Justice Department. He voluntarily contacted them and followed due process to resolve the situation, and there was no subpoena or FBI search as a result of full cooperation. People who favor Donald Trump will desperately want to find an equivalence here. But I think even a sort of cursory glance at these two scenarios suggests that these two misdemeanors are in potentially different leagues, really. I think Trump could be in serious trouble because of basically not cooperating and arguably, entering into illegality, whereas it's more plausible in Biden's case that there will be just negligence, wrong decisions. We don't even know that Biden was involved. That Biden knew about the ones in the previous office of his, although obviously having them in his house and in his garage is a problem. Although we don't know the classification of those documents, and there really aren't very many at all. But still, that's not great, right? It's not good optics either way. So this is bad for Biden, but it should be much worse for Trump, rightly so, because it appears that the actions of Trump and his team have been far worse than the actions of Biden and his team. Anyway, hopefully that's a bit of an explainer. It is a shame that people seem to put these as a complete equivalence. They aren't a complete equivalence, although similar things have happened to some degree. And hopefully this goes some way to showing that. If you have a disagreement, please put it respectfully below and let's talk about it. We'll see what you have to say. Uh, and thank you for watching, for getting this far. And please like, subscribe, and share. And I will speak to you soon.